listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm joined with my friend Wren. She is a meditation teacher, sound healer, and therapeutic art coach at Art and Soul Meditation, as well as a homeschooling mom of 3 young children. She is a forest bathing enthusiast who loves to immerse herself into nature and create lovely nature mandalas. Ivy is also a member of the Baha'i faith and a student of all religions and the metaphysical sciences. Her current projects include a book called Weeds and Wildflowers, and she is recording an album of original and soothing sounds for healing and meditation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming out. It's lovely to meet you in person.
Yes, it's very lovely to meet you.
Yes. So for those who don't know too much about you, could you give a little background on yourself and your spiritual journey?
Yes. So I have a bachelor's degree in religious studies, and I was a minister in the Christian faith for 10 years. So I've always been a very spiritually minded person. Even early on as a child, I was very spiritually minded and interested in metaphysical things. But I was kind of in a box, the way I grew up, I was in this box. But over the last several years, I've had this great spiritual awakening that has led me down a path that's just been amazing and so much fun and joy.
So in the intro, we talked a little bit about how you were a member of the Baha'i faith. What are some of the core teachings and principles of this faith?
So in the Baha'i faith, we believe that all the religions have these basic core universal truths to them. There are 3 core principles of the Baha'i faith that we consider as a summary of the faith, and that is oneness of God, oneness of religion, and oneness of humankind. And it's all about unity. There are some more principles I'll share with you, but the basic concept is that God, or whatever you call this greater being, the spirit, the universe, is one. There's not multiple, there's the all that is,
Right.
and that we all of us who are religious, spiritual people, we're all worshiping the same thing. We're all a part of the same thing. All the religions have these core truths to them. And the prophets of these religions were all manifestations of God that brought messages from God, and they had special messages for that time period, but they also came with universal truths that we can all benefit from today and we can all learn from. So in the Baha'i faith, the prophet is called Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah was around in the 1800s, and he was a great prophet that spent a lot of his life imprisoned in Persia. But there are a ton of writings from the Baha'i faith. There are just so many. But the basic principles that were brought to us by Baha'u'llah are independent search after truth. This is one of my biggest things that I love about the faith, was that unlike some traditions, we are encouraged to seek truth. Seek truth everywhere. A person cannot become a Baha'i until they are at least 15, and they have to do this independent search for truth before they're able to become a Baha'i. The oneness of the entire human race, the abolition of all forms of prejudice, harmony between religion and science, which is really an amazing thing too. In the faith, we believe that religion and science can coexist, and I love that. We also believe in the equality of men and women. It's huge part of the faith, and very, very, very controversial at the time. The faith did evolve out of Islam.
Okay.
So it was a very, very radical.
Right.
In fact, I will share one story, which is an amazing story. When the Baha'i faith first began, and there were a council of mostly men who were trying to come together and consult about their core principles and what they really should stand upon. And there was this woman called Tahereh, and she was a follower of the Bab, which is actually the one who kind of started the faith before the Prophet Baha'u'llah. And she came into this meeting of all of these men, and she tore off her head covering. And because these members of the faith were still so entrenched in Islam and trying to figure out the difference of their beliefs, several of the men actually killed themselves.
Wow.
Just because they saw her without her head covering. And her statement was, this is what we are about. Mm-hmm. We're about removing these barriers. We're about equality for men and women. Mm-hmm. We're about humans are one race, the oneness of mankind. We're unified. And that was a very extreme example of her statement. I mean, I can't imagine. That was like the 1840s, something like that, in Persia, in Iran.
Right.
So that's a crazy story. We also believe in universal education. Education is a big part of the Baha'i faith, not just material education, but also spiritual education. Mm-hmm. In fact, there is a quote from the writings that says, "Regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom." So that is a big part. We really stress spiritual education alongside of material education. And we also believe in the abolition of extremes of wealth and poverty. And we believe in tearing down social economical barriers as well. Justice is a huge part of the Baha'i faith. Service is a big part of the Baha'i faith. In fact, it's said in the faith that prayer is service. Service is prayer.
Okay. I really love the mind, body, and spirit. So encouraging the seeking of knowledge, which there have been religions in our history where it's like you can't even read it. You know, they don't want you to seek any of the information out yourself, and they definitely don't want you to challenge it by studying other sources of information. So it's really cool to hear that that's a big part, like the quest for knowledge is a part, and that you're not just like initiated at birth. This is something you have to desire and want. Mm-hmm. So there's no pressure, you know, like you're born into Christianity and you just start labeling yourself as a Christian because that's what your family did or whatever. And then you feel weird to not, like you feel excluded to not. But here it's like you take that step of initiation and say, I do want to seek more of this. And it's like a conscious choice, you know? So.
Yeah. Also, one of the big things in the Baha'i faith is that we are forbidden to proselytize. So we're not to try to convert people to become Baha'is. We have these writings that give us a plan and give us these wonderful principles, and we want to share them with others, but we don't expect them to become Baha'is. We want to work alongside them in community to help build the world into a better place. We're very much about the progress of man in both spiritual and material realms. We believe in something called the progressive revelation, which I kind of explained earlier, that the manifestations of God, all the prophets of God, have come with messages that were aimed for the people at the time because humankind is progressing, and they have been progressing over time, and certain messages humankind was not ready to receive at that time. But now we're at this point where we're able to receive these messages that Baha'u'llah brought, and that the writings contain.
I really love the inclusion of, bringing in the older religions, but yet allowing for evolution. So you can celebrate the older religions and know that there might be these limiting beliefs in there. But instead of just saying, okay, we have to burn the whole book, say, well, that was written for a different time period, and that there's still wisdom there, and that we can still find some meaning there, but we don't necessarily have to restrict ourselves to these older belief systems, but we can still appreciate them and therefore include all of them into, our world and coexist. I do feel like, I think I talked about this on the last episode, like the feeling that feels so toxic with religion is the bickering and the saying that I'm right, you're wrong. And that I do think moving forward, if we want more peace, we have to figure something out. Like, not everyone has to be this religion or that, but like, we do have to be okay with the fact that other people have these different beliefs. And how cool would it be if we just sort of looked at that person and said, I believe you too. I have my beliefs, but I believe that your beliefs are valid as well. And,
Right.
I don't have to convert to understand and see the beauty of yours. So I don't know. I feel like as, humans, we are evolving into being more harmonious, because now we have sort of burned some of those, bridges that were like keeping us disconnected. And now we're all kind of uniting more because we can travel. We can relate, share our stories, and realize, they might call their deity a different name, but at the end of the day, there's the core truth. And as long as you're not, murdering people or harming people with your message,
Right.
then we can all join together and just celebrate life. Right?
Yeah, that's right. So the writings also speak out a lot against bickering. We want unity and harmony is the goal. And so we have a process in the Baha'i faith called consultation. And instead of having arguments, basically the idea is there are principles that allow us to consult with each other. The whole idea is that everybody's voice is heard, and that we acknowledge each other's voice, each other's truth, and we come to an agreement of sorts at the core of that subject that we're discussing, something that brings together what we all see or what we all believe. And so making decisions is all about consultation, consulting each other, and coming to a decision that everybody can feel good about.
That's beautiful. I definitely think that is a positive, and I've been, naturally drawn to like Unitarianism, just anything that allows the space for others. So when I found out that this religion existed, I was so excited that I'm like, wow, that we're making a lot of progress as humans. Like if we can unite in this way, if we can hold space for each other in this way, then I have faith that we will not just sit and destroy each other. Because like I do feel like there was a point in our history where it was just like no one could even interact. Like tribes would fight each other, everybody was at war, and it just shows you how I feel like we have advanced. I mean, I know that everyone wants to hate on where we're at, like the world's terrible and I'm like, but actually,
yeah,
I think it's getting better.
It is. And one of the things that our writings talk about also is that there will be a collapse of sorts before we can rebuild. So our civilization, it's really simultaneous. While there are old things that are falling away, there are new things that are rising up in our civilization. And those new things, those are the really good things: the equality, the unity, the harmony, the peace. We believe in something called the most great peace, that the world can attain this goal of peace between all mankind. And that's what we work towards. And the biggest thing that we are working on right now, as a religion, we kind of have these roadmaps, these goals that we set, and these plans. And the biggest thing right now is we're building communities, but not just any communities. We're building both spiritual communities and material communities. So people coming together, helping one another through service, but also valuing spiritual principles and virtues and trying to become better people. And we believe that when that happens, when people come together as they're trying to become better individuals themselves, and these people come together, we can create a better world.
Right, because that's how you share the ideas, and that's how you create the tribe that's lifting each other up and really supporting each other. And I think that's what we need. I think so many of us, we're having a hard time because we're doing it all alone, and we're so separate. So these communities are kind of how we, I think can mend the bond and work together, and take some of the load off of all this. Okay, everyone's paying their rent separately. Everyone's paying their babysitters separately. What if we all collaborated?
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful. I mean, that is what the early church of the Christian religion, the early church was about. And that's just a beautiful picture of how we can all, be in unity. And one of the things that I wanted to share also about the faith is that we're considered actually one of the most widespread religions in the world. We're really the newest world faith of the main religions, but there are groups of Baha'is in I don't remember how many countries, but we're the most widespread besides Christianity, as in the most. We're in the most amount of countries. We have these temples around the world that are actually very beautiful. Yeah. I have these pictures of these temples that we have that are centers for the work in these different countries. We have what's called national spiritual assemblies in each country. And in the United States, it's actually in the Chicago area is our national house of worship there. And it is really beautiful if you ever get a chance to go visit. It's beautiful, peaceful space.
I would love that. I don't think I've ever seen any imagery around the faith. I've only really lightly heard about it, and I told you earlier, because my wedding date just happened to be on, the day that they celebrate this particular faith, and I looked it up a little bit then and we decided to make it a part of our ceremony, and we actually had a different color candle for each of the main religions that we lit in sort of this unification, we're unifying ourselves, but we're also, within this community of other people. And so we wanted to bring in each of these principles and honor each different style of belief. This was all intuitive.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, but I don't know, it meant so much to me when I saw it. I was like, this date is not random, So I feel like that even this ceremony is, meant to be, and it's bigger than just two. It's uniting all sorts of different things. So let's talk a little bit about meditation. How has it supported you and your mental health over time? And do you feel like everyone can benefit a little bit by practicing it?
Yes, that's the answer. And I talked a little bit earlier about my time spent in inpatient care for my bipolar disorder. And that is where I really came into begin my practice of meditation very seriously. Before I kind of had this idea of meditation and prayer in the Christian faith, and I was really actually drawn to Eastern practices, which was kind of controversial for the community that I was in at the time. But I was drawn to those kinds of practices, and when I came to this recovery center, they used some mindfulness practices as a way to help us, and I took away so much from that. It calmed me so much. It brought me into myself in a way that felt so peaceful that I decided afterwards, we made a plan, basically a self-care plan, as I was leaving the recovery center. And that was a big part of my self-care plan, was to delve into meditation more and to spend time in meditation. And so after that, after a little while of going through that and practicing meditation more, I decided that I wanted to become a meditation teacher. So I started some meditation teacher training online during the pandemic, and it widened my it deepened my meditation practice, and it has allowed me to share that with other people. One of the greatest benefits that I've had is I was able to go off of anxiety medication just through learning these meditation practices, mindfulness practices. It made such a big difference in my ability to cope with stress. And I think that everybody can benefit from it. Even the smallest amount of time that you can give to meditation and mindfulness practices, it can make a huge difference in your mental health.
Right. And there's so many types of meditation. And
Exactly.
I think that's where people get stuck, because they're like, I can't sit there with my eyes closed for 5 minutes. Well, if you really believe that you can't sit there with your eyes closed for a minute, maybe light a candle and stare at the flame for 5 minutes in silence and be mindful of your breath.
Yes.
Or there are active meditations. I think about people walking through like sort of the labyrinths, but the whole time their goal is to be present and aware. And so they're not sitting still, and I get that. I get it's hard to sit still. But maybe if you did more of the active meditations first, you could start regulating your nervous system. And then you might be surprised at how long you can sit still.
Yes, absolutely. And one of my big things is I kind of specialize in helping people with ADHD, because I have ADHD myself. So, and I know a lot of us think that we can't meditate, but yeah, when I say meditation, there are so many meditation practices. And at the first meditation teacher training that I took was all was a Buddhist based meditation teaching, and so it was a little bit more formal as far as meditation. But then I took another teacher training course, which introduced me to a variety of meditation practices, and it really opened my eyes to all of these types of meditation that can help people of different with different brains.
Right. I used to not understand the whole goal. I think I would see the stance and see people do it, but I didn't realize, well, why are they doing it? But for me, doing yoga actually helped me meditate, because I would get all the movement out. And I realized that I was like just not settled. And so I would do, like 10, 20 minutes of yoga, and then I would want to lay there in Savasana. And then I'm like, well, I'm kind of meditating when I'm laying here. So what if I actively, did the yoga first and then sat in that energy that I created and then let it rest? But it's almost like, I think some of us have a lot of pent up energy that we almost need to get out first. So maybe like if you're struggling with sitting still, allow yourself to move. Add that into your meditation practice, like 5 minutes of moving, and then try to meditate.
Yes, absolutely. Some other things that I add into my meditation practice to help me get into this state of meditation is I do art and I journal.
Right.
Journaling is really amazing because it helps you. You can just brain dump and get all of this stuff out on paper. And that really helps prepare you for meditation, for just finding your inner calm, and, regulating your nervous system and all of that. So I love to do that. And then I also think, I love to do art. Doing art also came out of my time in the recovery center. They had basically an art therapy room where you just a bunch of paint and paper and all this stuff. So I was able to just play around with the art stuff, and that drew me in too, because at this time I love to journal, but at that time I just couldn't put down words. I was stuck and I couldn't put down words. So the painting really helped me just to get some of these emotions out, some of these things that I couldn't express. It helped me get all of this out. And I also knew that this was a healthy thing and a good thing to continue to practice, because my oldest daughter, actually has trouble expressing her emotions, but she's very artistic.
Right.
And I saw that it really helped her. So when I was introduced to it again at this recovery center, I knew that I had to make it also a part of my practice,
Right.
moving forward, as a part of my self-care plan. And so I began to art journal. And eventually, through all of this art journaling and meditation practices that I did, I was able to start journaling again.
Right.
Because I came to a place where I could express myself better. And so then I began, and I did training as a therapeutic art coach as well.
Right. It's interesting because I didn't take the journey the same way that you did, but I feel like we stumbled upon the same things. You know, I'm like doing yoga meditation, and I've always been an artist. You know, I'm a doodler. I've always had art in my life, but I didn't always like set intention with it, or, you know, make the space to say, okay, I'm going to make art, and it's going to be for mindfulness today. So I would make it to like maybe sell it or whatever, but then that kind of pulls you out of being just in the meditative trance kind of making the art, or what am I trying to express? So sometimes I make art just with the intention of, I want to release some emotions, I want to move something, I want to unblock something, and I'm not going to sell this. So this is for me, you know. So it was important as an artist for me to separate the art that's for my own mental health and then the art that's to sell. Because then I don't have the boundary of like, what if someone doesn't like the colors, or what if no one buys this? It doesn't matter. It's not even, the intention is never to make something beautiful. Even sometimes it's just, I want to pull something out that's in me and put it on paper.
Yes. I mean, I really learned that. My mother was an artist. She was a very good artist. And so as I grew up, I thought, well, I'm not an artist because I don't have the skill that she has. So I wasn't really into art that much because I thought that was her thing. You know, I have my own things. But when my daughter, they told me in her preschool that she was super gifted in the art area, I wanted to start making art with her more often. And, you know, we ended up homeschooling, and art became a big part of our curriculum, a big part of what we did every day, because it helped her. It helped her emotionally, and it helped her learn things. It was just her language.
Right.
And so I started picking up on the art as a way just to feed my soul and just to express myself. And so I had always thought before, it has to be something beautiful. It has to be something, you have to be gifted at it. You have to have skill. But my whole idea of art changed and creativity changed. And so I want people to understand that creating through art is a great way to cope with stress and everything that we have going on in our daily life, and find peace. And the best thing about being creative and practicing creativity every day is the fact that it exercises that muscle in your brain, that part of your brain, and it helps you be able to come up with creative solutions to everyday life problems.
Right. So this is like when they say do yoga off the mat, you know, make art off the mat. Just to be a creative being in general is such a positive thing. And I really feel like, you know, we talk about like unschooling or unlearning thing, you know, but so many adults, okay, all of us have to figure out that we don't have to have this perfection. We can do yoga without a perfect yoga body, or what, you know, this idea that we see in the Yoga Journal magazine. We can make art, and it doesn't have to look like Salvador Dali, because that's Salvador Dali. That's not us. You know, we can do meditation. It doesn't have to look a certain way. But I think that we have these images of what is art, what is meditation, you know, what is learning, but it doesn't actually matter, like what it looks like. It doesn't, you know, there is no you know, everything that you're doing is perfect for you. Right. And if you're trying to mimic something else, well, it's not going to look perfect, because that's someone else's art, or that's someone else's yoga routine. So even down to dancing, I think we've seen, J-Lo out there doing her thing, and she looks so great and professional. And we think, I can't dance. Well, maybe you're not going to dance just like J-Lo because she's already doing that.
Right.
Maybe your dance is like more of a swaying or using your arms, or like, I don't know. But I actually think that we have these walls put up that as adults we have to keep unlearning.
Oh, absolutely. And the dance thing, I love to dance, and I'm actually kind of working on putting together a workshop on meditative, mindful movement to just help people get in their bodies and feel comfortable with expressing themselves through dance in a way that, they don't have to be choreographed.
Right.
It doesn't have to maybe look good to anybody else or whatever. It's just how you feel, and you're just getting into your body. And I actually want to do this with families, kids and adults, to just help them connect with their bodies.
Yeah, I really struggled with that as a kid, and I just made a post the other day about me dancing. I dance more publicly now because I want people to see me doing it, which looks a lot different than J-Lo. And they're like, oh, well, she's just a regular person, and she's just dancing in her bedroom. Like, it doesn't have to be like this big grand performance. That's just me in my flow state. But just to give other people other examples of what movement can look like.
Yeah.
But we're so dissociated. I mean, I know I struggle hard. I go right out, if I'm going through like conflict or emotional turmoil or whatever, I tend to dissociate and leave my body as I process it.
So do I.
But it's so much better to like pull myself back in and allow that movement. And then now I can process these big feelings, and they're not getting stuck in places in my body because I'm moving them out right as they come in. And it's been very healing for me.
Yeah. And all of these things are meditation practices, can be meditation practices. That's exactly what I'm saying. The art can be a meditative practice. The dance, the mindful movement can be meditative practice. So when I say meditation, I mean there are a lot of ways to meditate.
Right.
One thing that I've done for art as a meditative practice, I was on this site. I had a subscription to this site called Creative Bug. That's a really, really neat site for classes, different art classes and things like that. But there was a course that I took that was just called Color Meditations. And basically for 30 days, I used my watercolors, and you did like just certain things, like maybe just zigzags, and you did different colors of zigzags, like on this page, like that day, that was one thing you did. The next day, maybe you did circles of different colors, and you just chose whatever color. Sometimes it was like you just chose whatever color was calling to you that day, whatever color. But I did this for 30 days, and it was so cool. It was so much fun and so relaxing, and it really was like a meditation, because you're just making these same marks over and over again with different colors, and it released a lot of stress. It was a beautiful thing.
Right. And you're just in flow. You're not worried about the outcome.
Right.
You're not necessarily going to be like hanging the zigzag on the wall. There's no need to make it look a certain way. It's just about getting the materials out and playing.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing with watercolors is that you don't have complete control over it a lot of times. And you end up with something beautiful sometimes on accident.
Right. I love working with watercolors, because it really does. It's like the colors will start merging and blending together, and then they form a whole new color that I wasn't even expecting.
Yeah, I do a lot of my therapeutic artwork with watercolor. I just feel like you've got the water element there too, and it's just so, with emotions, water and emotions, it's just so symbolic and therapeutic just to use watercolors. I love it.
All around. So do you offer any classes or guidance for people seeking support with art therapy?
I do. You can find on my Facebook and Instagram, you'll see when I have certain workshops coming up, but you can book individual sessions with me, and I can help people. I actually have these sessions that are kind of my signature sessions that are called Art and Soul sessions, and they include meditation, art, and sound.
Okay.
And sound healing. So I group them all together. They go very well together. They all go hand in hand. So, and my workshops, when I do these art and soul workshops, also we will do a creative project, then we'll move into a meditative state and a guided meditation visualization from that that art project, and then we'll go into a sound bath with the sound healing aspect.
Right.
And so it's a really cool experience. I love to do it.
Yeah, I feel like combining all those is amazing, and that's so wonderful that you offer that guidance for people. Let's talk a little bit more about sound healing. How has it impacted you, and what are some of the instruments that you work with?
So sound healing is really special to me. This is one of the ways that I was able to start meditating deeper. I'm a musical person, and I'm really drawn to music. And when I learned about sound baths and sound healing, I started using those in my meditation practice, as part of my meditation practice. And it changed my meditation practice. It just really deepened it. And the biggest part of that is the fact that those vibrations really change your brainwaves, from the high stress, fight or flight kind of brainwaves to these more relaxed and even deeper meditative states. It's really fascinating. It's amazing. And just the way I felt after listening to these sound baths and this sound healing was so crazy. It was crazy how much easier it was to meditate, and just how refreshed I felt afterwards. So being a musical person, I have a background as a singer. I trained in opera, and I also just have dabbled in music off and on. I was going to go into music education, but kind of changed my plans. I have always just been drawn to music. And so after hearing about sound baths and sound healing, I naturally wanted to participate in that myself. So I started purchasing all these instruments and getting into it, of course. And so I mostly work with crystal, with the crystal singing bowls. I learned to play the Native American flute. I use the steel tongue drum, frame drums. But I use my voice a lot too. I do a lot of chanting, toning, vocal toning, and singing. I come up with original chants, original things. And that's what I'm hoping to get this album out soon, with some of my sound healing, with some of my original chants and songs.
That's wonderful. It's a really great way to be able to share it with people. You know, if they can't see you in person, they can still bring that into their home and support you in that way, and then just have it anytime.
Yeah.
I saw an acupuncturist, and she had this song. It was like a certain amount of time. It was like the perfect amount of time each time. And she would always play the same one. And she did that intentionally because that every time I would go, I would know what to expect. I would have this experience. I would know when it's coming to the end, and it's almost like I could just like relax more into it, So it was like the repetition of that song had its own healing quality, and it was like a comfort for me with all these needles in my body. I was on acupuncture. I'm like, okay, we're getting close to the end. But sound is just so good. I think, it's helping us on multiple levels, even energetically. I think things like gongs and singing bowls can actually help clear our aura, right? It's like clearing these energies that we've sort of collected throughout the day. And then you bang that gong and it's like, okay,
oh yeah, I also do gongs too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I knew I left one out.
Right. I was like, I feel like I've seen pictures with gongs, but I really do think, it's helping us mentally, but even on that spiritual level, it's almost like having this cleansing effect. So then it's like, you can't think when you're listening to some of these songs, because you're hearing the instrument, it's almost like shutting that monkey mind off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And another cool thing about the sound healing, when I do it, it's very intuitive. So you're not going to hear the same sound bath from me Although there's really good things that come from also repetition and listening to things that are repetitive. There's also, with cutting off the monkey mind, there's also a great thing about not knowing what to expect and just listening, just this mindful listening. And the great thing about sound healing also is that it's kind of a no judgment kind of music, because, you know, when we hear normal chord progressions and stuff that we hear in music and songs, we can like prejudge and say, oh, well, you know, this is kind of not my style, or I don't really like this. But there's really no judgment ability, you know, in the sound healing, because the music is so, it's very intuitive. So you don't know what to expect next. It's not predictable. It just clears your mind of that monkey mind kind of thing.
Right. And like, it's very refreshing. You know, I've done a couple sound baths, was really not aware of like what was going to happen. You know, I'd never done it before, but I did leave feeling totally renewed.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, a lot of times it feels like you've had like a really deep sleep.
Right.
Yeah. In just a short amount of time.
Right. And it is that meditate. So if you can't meditate, I feel like doing the sound bath, you are laying there and they help guide you.
It is a kind of meditation. You know, it's a sound meditation. And I love it. It was super helpful for me with my ADHD to get out of my head and my monkey mind. And so I love to also, it's very meditative for me to actually do it as well, to perform a sound bath. So I love doing it. And I do sound baths periodically around the Knoxville area, at different places. So you can usually find events and information on my Facebook page.
Awesome. So I know you're really into forest bathing. Could you share a little bit about what that is, and what are some ways that incorporating this practice has supported your overall well-being?
Oh, yes. I love nature. I've always been a lover of nature, just being outside. But I haven't been a lover of nature in maybe a traditional way, as in, you know, loving to be super active in nature, or, you know, I love to go hiking, but it wasn't about like getting to the place or the exercise that was what I enjoyed. It was like taking my time and paying attention to things and taking pictures and all of that. So I'd kind of been forest bathing most of my life. I would sit out in the woods behind my house with my journal. I just loved like being in nature. And that's really what forest bathing is about. It's about connecting with nature in this way that's different from, you know, actually connecting with nature to learn and identify plants and things, and to be active as a part of an exercise routine or something. I'm just going to read a little bit about forest bathing here in this book, Your Guide to Forest Bathing by M. Amos Clifford. The air through which we walk is in many ways similar to water. It moves in currents. It flows in waves. You can see this in the myriad patterns of clouds floating in the ocean of sky. The atmosphere is much like the ocean. The air around us is an ocean in which we have always bathed. And in the practice of forest bathing, we immerse our senses in the special qualities of the fluid, oceanic ambiance of the woodlands. We walk slowly so we can focus our senses on the myriad ways the living forest surrounds and touches us. So it's all about just participating in the atmosphere with the different senses. And when I lead forest bathing experiences, there are several like activities that I encourage, and it has a lot to do with touching, smelling, just feeling, making an emotional connection, a spiritual connection. There are very many health benefits to forest bathing, and it technically originated as a practice called Shinrin-yoku in Japan. And there's been many studies about the effects of being in the forest, being outdoors, and experiencing nature as a health benefit. Right. But it's also a very spiritual practice, and it's emotionally healing just to be out there and soak in this atmosphere. So I love to do that. And out of this experience of experiencing nature in that way, I developed this habit with my art. I like to combine things with my art of making nature mandalas.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love watching you make these and like posting the images of these.
Yeah. So the idea behind them, is that the ancient symbol of the mandala represents the circle of life and the interconnectedness of the universe. And when I make one with these found nature items, it feels even more profound.
Right.
It not only represents the circle of life, but also the seasons, the ephemeral quality of life. Making the nature mandalas helps me to like mindfully connect with the earth.
Right. Because
Yeah.
you're taking that moment while you're in the forest to play with it.
Yeah,
and
to
I feel
play.
like it's responding to that because it's all alive too. So it's sort of playing back like, here's some tools, like be creative,
Yeah.
So it almost creates this beautiful relationship with nature itself and puts you back into like, well, I am also part of nature, like I might feel separated at times because I live in a city and I'm hearing horns honking as like being in the city. I do feel like it's almost impossible not to experience that disconnection at times. So
Yeah.
that return and like it almost like helps you feel more like your natural self, as you submerge yourself into it. I feel like you come out different.
Yeah, and the practice of forest bathing, although it's called forest bathing, you don't actually have to be in a forest. You can do this in a city park. I do it in my backyard sometimes. It's just about connecting with nature in that way, in a playful, in a really just kind of a playful way, and mindful. We don't see these small things a lot of times when we're outside. We don't take that time to see, to feel, to experience these things. And there's been several things while I'm doing my forest bathing experiences, when I'm doing my nature mandalas, I see things I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't been mindfully connecting with nature in that way. Like I've picked up a leaf and seen a snail that's smaller than my pinky finger, like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just so amazing. And to see these different creatures and find these, beautiful wildflowers and all the shapes and colors.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, I've never loved hiking for exercise. Like anytime I was hiking, there had to be some kind of beautiful thing I was going to see at some point, or a waterfall or something. I'd almost have to trick myself to even go. Because like when I'm sweating and my heart rate's up, that feels like fight or flight to me. Okay. So as someone that struggles with anxiety, if I'm over here hiking a mountain and I'm trying to relax, like it doesn't work. So for me, that mindfulness in nature makes me feel a little bit better about it, because I'm like, well, you can get these benefits and you don't have to be this professional rock climber, to get it. And, I don't even like to go hiking with people, unless they have that same mindfulness approach, because I don't want to feel like, oh, I'm lagging behind and like I'm not, keeping up or anything. But I think a lot of people are probably similar to that at times. Like they want to feel like they're in nature, but they don't necessarily want to just exercise for 4 hours.
Right.
So it's like, well, you don't have to, and it's like just giving yourself permission to just like go sit by the lake, and not walk. Like, what if you didn't exercise the whole time? Like, what if you just sat there and watched the ducks swim by and like, you don't have to swim the whole channel,
Yeah.
But it's almost like our culture has taught us like, okay, hiking, rock climbing, swimming. And it's like, all that's wonderful, like for the people that really thrive in that area. But some of us are like, well, we can still benefit, like I can go lay in the lake and float and I'm just as, I'm going to experience benefits just from that. I don't have to just swim the whole time. Right. It's like we feel like we just have to push ourselves. But I feel like my life is calling me to be more still, actually, and to slow down.
Yeah, and it's all about balance too.
Right. I'm not saying don't get your heart rate up at times, but like a lot of us are actually trying to do the opposite because our heart rate is up
Right.
too much. And so, to allow yourself to just have these peaceful bliss moments too, in between all of this.
And look at kids. Watch kids when they're outside. How they experience it. How they play and connect with nature. And that's what I'm talking about. I mean, you're going to feel like really silly sometimes. If you join one of my forest bathing excursions, you're going to feel really silly. Sometimes we talk to trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you might feel really silly, but it's all about, being playful and connecting with nature in a way that, children naturally do.
Right.
Naturally do.
Right. And that's definitely healing our inner child stuff, that where we've disconnected from that. And there's this return, I feel like, into adulthood where we're like, some of that childhood stuff wasn't meant to be just lived for 5 years and then turned off. Like, what if that was actually supposed to, carry us into our adulthood and like keep us tuned in and keep us healthy? So I've been singing this tree out in my backyard. It's an oak tree. And anytime I'm anxious or before a podcast, if I want to be really grounded, I'll go out and I'll do my mantras and sing to this tree with my hands on it. And I just feel like the tree loves it when I do this. So it's also benefiting. And then it helps me feel rooted. So I'll look and see how tall those branches go. And then I'll imagine, okay, the roots are equally as deep as this height. So then I'll ground and say, like, look how rooted I am. I'm just as rooted as this tree. And I will come back in. Like, I might be totally anxious before this. I'll go sing to this tree for 5 minutes or however long, come back in, and I'm just ready. I'm more confident. I just feel more at peace. I'm just like trusting. And I feel like when we're in that natural habitat, a lot of those anxieties just go away. And it's like, it's this standard. It's these things that we've put on ourselves that are actually unnatural.
Oh, yeah.
So when we return and we realize, oh, well, I'm allowing myself to get in this frantic state, but if I can return to the pace of nature, then I'll be able to just flow with everything.
Yeah, we can learn so much from nature. One of my favorite things that I ever learned about from nature is, the roots of the trees and how they're all connected, and and the plants communicate with each other through all these connections, and the fungi and all that. It's amazing. I used this example in a community building conference for the Baha'i Faith, and I love to imagine when I'm out there that I'm tapping into that root system, that connection with all of nature, that I'm tapping into that, because I'm a part of nature. We are a part of nature. And, one of the activities that I have people do is to listen and see if, what do they think that they're hearing from the roots. What messages are you hearing the plants, communicating to each other, using imagination and everything, there's a lot to learn from nature. Right.
And I feel like, as we progress with science, like we learn even more about the complexity of the life cycles and things. There was this documentary, and I think it was on a society called Donimer or something, but someone had invented this device that you can just hook up to a plant, and like each plant has like this different sounds that it's making.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, this plant is singing. But like it would talk to the plant, and then it was like the sound would change when it would, talk to the, like ask it a question. So I'm like, this is really weird, because I think the plants are interacting with us even more than we could even imagine. And science is evolving to actually help us, I think, understand the living property behind it, where so many people pass trees all the time. They don't even think about it as a living being.
Right.
But it's like, there is wisdom, and they're whispering to us, all the time. And I feel like the indigenous cultures know this, and they knew this, and like they were very tapped in and connected to all of these living, like every rock, every tree, every animal. And I feel like as some of us were never taught that, and so we're sort of just now making that connection, and it's so beautiful. And I feel like it awakens so much in us.
It does. And that's another thing, actually, the Baha'i faith is very they're very much into environmental issues, but they're also, the writings of the Baha'i faith, they use metaphors from nature a lot. Where the flowers of one garden, the leaves of one tree, the waves of one ocean, and things like beautiful things like that. And in the garden of your heart, plant not but the rose of love. I mean, beautiful, poetic things about using nature as an example and a metaphor. And I love that about the faith as well. It's just I have such a connection with nature in that way.
Right. It's beautiful to have a spiritual tradition that honors that and actually helps you, want to cultivate even more of a connection. So let's talk a little bit about the focus of your book, Weeds and Wildflowers, and will it be available for purchase when it's finished?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this this book, Weeds and Wildflowers. I've always wanted to write a book, but I didn't think that this would be the first way I go. But doing my nature mandalas really became an inspiration for this book. First of all, I take pictures of my mandalas and I make like magnets and stuff out of them and I share them and I just, people like them. And I thought, I'm going to put these in a book. I'm going to make a little, book of, like an art book with all of these images of these nature mandalas. And then I started thinking, I love to write and everything. So I thought, I'm going to make this a compilation of art and meditation and poetry, things that I love to do. And so it's going to be full of nature mandala art, meaningful meditations, poetry. It's going to be a guide for anyone longing to find the beauty in life and develop a deeper connection to the world around them. Creating the mandala style art from the found items in nature was my way of mindfully engaging in the world around me and satisfying my need for creative expression. And so it became so therapeutic. And it helped me relieve my anxiety and support me and advance my healing from depression. And so now I just want to share that experience with others, share the art, share these insightful meditations that draw on nature, and some poetry that I've written and quotes, and all of that is going to be in the book. It's also going to be kind of an interactive experience with some practices that you can do to connect with nature. Yeah. It's going to be kind of broken up in the seasons, and I'm just really excited about it. It's will help people to connect with nature in a sensual and spiritual way,
right?
And it's been really fun to work on this and put this together.
Right. I really love how, as you've went through your own healing, your own journey, this process of unfolding, that you're like, I want to help others too, because, you received probably little bits of guidance along the way too. And how big of an impact does that make, right? So you take this time to really organize it for people and say, okay, these are the things. Like, here's some guided meditations. Here's some examples. And I think seeing that really helps motivate people, because there aren't really that many examples. There aren't many, people that have like organized it in such a way that people can say, okay, I think I could, start a mindfulness practice. I think I could make my own nature mandala, So I just love that you've taken the time to organize it for others and help lift them up as well.
I know a lot of people don't have time to like sit down and read a book, or they feel like overwhelmed when they sit down and read a book. So for me, I thought with this first project, I wanted to make something like this. I know that I get a lot out of books like this, that you can just take a little part at a time, and it's very interactive, and you can just, you can go through it and you can experience different things, but you don't have to go straight through the book. You can
Right.
skip ahead. You can open it to any point and find a practice or something that you can do. And so
Right.
that's how this book is going to be. And I'm working with a publisher right now called Something or Other Publishing. And they work kind of like crowdfunding, but they're like you vote. It's just
Okay.
votes. So I'll give that information to you, but you can go on and read about my book project and vote for it to be published. And if I get 1,000 votes for it, then I can get a publishing contract. So that's something I would appreciate help with if you're interested in my book project and purchasing it in the future.
Yes, I will definitely make sure that everyone knows how to find that and will help support you in that way.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're kind of coming to the end. You had brought up the Cumberland Gap Folk Fest at one point. Could you share a little bit of details and like dates and stuff on that?
Yeah, so coming up August 12th in Cumberland Gap, Tennessee. It's a beautiful, quaint little town. And so in the downtown area of Cumberland Gap, they've set up on the streets this whole festival that's celebrating even like different traditions and celebrating the area.
Right.
And they're bringing food and music, and I'm actually doing some art presentations and art activities with a few friends of mine there, and we'll be making some nature mandala sun catchers. All of this is, it's free to attend, and my workshop will be free. So you can just come and enjoy the making the art, and I'll be, using some of my sound healing instruments, and you can just hang out with me and see some of my art. And it's just really fun. I did this last year, and it was a huge success. It was so much fun. And yeah, it'll be August 12th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. in Cumberland Gap, Tennessee.
All right, wonderful. Well, a lot of our listeners are from, this area, and I try to really focus on, lifting up the people in my local community. So I really love these festivals and things where we can all connect and unite and celebrate our own little history here in the Appalachia area. So that sounds really fun.
Yeah, and the town has a lot of the downtown area is very artsy, and
Right.
it's just they highlight some of the folk art and crafts and just promote the historic little town. And there's a lot of nature things you can do nearby too. So it's an amazing place. It's not too far from Knoxville. And so I would say, if you have a chance, drive out there, experience the area, and you won't regret it. It's a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. So what's the best way for our listeners to follow you and support your work?
Yes, the best way to keep up with me is through Facebook and Instagram. And it's Art and Soul Meditation on Facebook and on Instagram. And you can message me. You can book things with me, and you can find all my events on there.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for creating this episode with me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.
Yes, I love this. Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.